Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karine Nishimura. I'm a French journalist working mainly for the French radio station Radio France, as well as the newspaper Libération. And I will moderate today this discussion about the government decision to refuse the Science Council of Japan's nomination and the constitution of a new group to protest this decision. So criticism of Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga for excluding CIS humanities and social science scholars from a list of candidates to become new member of the Science Council of Japan continues to grow. Over 600 now academic societies, universities, and civil organizations have protested what many have called an unprecedented intervention into personal issues at the National Academy. Suga, for himself, continues to insist that his actions were relevant and legal. In October, humanities and social science scholars joined to launch the Japanese Liaison Council for Academic Societies and the Humanities and Social Science, which is independent of the Science Council, but also protesting the government's decision. 3 senior members of this new group are with us today to discuss the controversy and what it means for freedom of thought in Japan. We have in the center Yukio Himiyama, which is a former president of the International Geographical Union and a professor emeritus of Hokkaido University of Education. We have with us Yoichi Kibata sensei, who is a chair of the International Connection Committee of Japanese Historical Council and professor emeritus of the University of Tokyo. And we have with us Professor Izumi Sato, who is president of the Association for Modern Japanese Literary Studies and a professor of Aoyama Gakuin University. So we will begin this discussion with Professor Kibata sensei, who will speak for about 5 minutes.
Thank you for your introduction. Now, first let me explain the nature of our movement and the purpose of this conference. When Prime Minister Suga's decision not to appoint 6 nominees to the Science Council of Japan was made known 2 months ago, we were shocked. And many academic organizations all over Japan reacted very quickly and issued statements in protest against that decision, and asked for the nomination of those 6 candidates as council members. For example, in the field of historical studies to which I belong, the Historical Science Society of Japan, 歴史学研究会, issued an urgent statement as early as on October the 3rd. In many fields of humanities and social sciences, 307 academic associations have so far issued statements or appeals protesting against the Prime Minister's decision. In the fields of natural sciences, similar reactions have been displayed. This shows that many Japanese academics instantly, and I would say intuitively, sensed that this decision of the Prime Minister endangers not only the activities of the Science Council of Japan itself, but also academic freedom, which is a crucial backbone of our society. However, as you know, the Prime Minister and government remained unwavering in the claim that the rejection of appointment was legitimate, and at the same time refused to show the reasons for the rejection. In view of such a situation, academic societies across various fields of humanities and social sciences decided to set up the Japanese Liaison Council for the Academic Societies in the Humanities and Social Sciences in mid-October. And this Liaison Council published the joint statement on November the 6th, which we are showing to you today. Here, I want to emphasize that this kind of, and this degree of cooperation and solidarity is totally unprecedented. It is true that our academic activities always have close contact with our society, and individual academic society is more or less used to be engaged in social action in one way or another. But such a joint action is completely unprecedented. I want to emphasize this. And at today's press conference, we want to let you know the reason why we feel the rejection of this appointment is such a serious issue and what is at stake in this incident. Our joint statement itself is very short and simple, but we want you to understand its meaning and its background. We think that the issue about which we are discussing has universal significance, and we want to have messages and comments sent from international quarters. Let me introduce one international reaction. It is a letter from Professor Daya Reddy, President of the International Science Council, and it was sent to the Science Council of Japan. In that letter, Professor Reddy emphasizes the importance of, I quote, a free and responsible practice of science as fundamental to scientific advancement and human and environmental well-being, unquote, and supports the Science Council of Japan in its efforts to defend the scientific to defend and secure scientific freedom of choice in nominating members. So we welcome a similar encouragement from abroad. This is my first statement. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kibata sensei. We will now listen to the Professor Himiyama sensei. We'll talk about 5 minutes, also in English, directly.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Yukio Himiyama, Emeritus Professor of Hokkaido University of Education. And I'd like to ask you to look at this pamphlet, which you have. And I have only 5 minutes. I have to be very quick indeed. Please open the first page, and then you will see a chart here, this one. So this is a sort of chart which explains the structure of Science Council of Japan. And this time, there are 3 sections in Science Council of Japan: Humanities and Social Sciences, Section 1, which has severely hit this time. And Section 2, Life Sciences, and Section 3, Physical Sciences and Engineering. And I'm a geographer. And I was the president of the IGU, International Geographical Union. And geography is truly multidisciplinary, especially about half of the geographers belong to Section 1, which is human social sciences. And half of the geographers belong to Section 3, actually. And many of those physical geographers join the geoscience. And anyway, because of that situation, I could see not only Section 1, but Section 2 and 3 together. And from that perspective, I want to raise 2 issues from here. The first is the international significance of the current program. If you open the page 4, it says the membership and contribution to international academic groups. There are so many international academic organizations or unions listed here. If we don't have this kind of council, it's very difficult to maintain that relations internationally. So if something happens to Science Council of Japan, it will damage those relations very severely. That's why Professor Daya Reddy, the president of International Science Council, is worried about the current situation. And then if you look at page 5, you can see some international programs or projects which Science Council of Japan is deeply involved. The first one shown here is a Future Earth. This is a sort of an umbrella organization or program to cover most of the global environmental problems from mainly from an academic point of view. And then this one thing, and also you see the SDGs. I think everybody knows this, yes, Sustainable Development Goals. And also Science Council of Japan is playing a very important role to link not only academics, but academics and governmental agencies, and even the Prime Minister is deeply involved in that. We are actually cooperating, we have been cooperating with all these. And that will be in danger also. And something which is not here, shown here, is another one is ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, in which Japan has been playing a very important role, not only the government, but academics or educational specialists. They're all cooperating together to make ESD a success. Japan is really the leading country of that. So what will happen to that if we damage Science Council of Japan? Those things I want to advertise internationally so that Japanese people or Japanese government in particular pay more attention to that problem. And one more thing I want to emphasize is Science Council is a very good place to work together interdisciplinary. I said that there are 3 sections, and they are cooperating each other, not only in those international activities, but also in the domestic, proposals. There are a number of proposals submitted to the government or to the society at large, and many of them are made by the joint force of the people in section 1, 2, and 3. So it's a really good model of the Academy of Science. And I was proud of that internationally. When I'm talking in international meetings, I say, oh, Science Council of Japan is such and such. And everybody said, oh, it's good. Why do we have to destroy it? Why do we have to damage it? I can't understand. So, Prime Minister should explain why he refused the 6 people and why he doesn't give the reasons. He should do that. Then we may be able to discuss about the structure of Science Council. But without those reactions from Prime Minister, Science Council, I don't think Science Council can do anything. Oh, it's time, sorry. It's finished.
So we will listen once again, Professor Kibata, before listening to Professor Sato.
Yes. Now I want to explain very briefly what is at stake and what we think lies behind the decision of the Prime Minister. Here I would like to point to 2 background contexts of the current problem. The first context is the government's tendency to contain dissenting voices to the government's policies. The members of the Science Council of Japan are selected on the basis of the merits of their scholarly and academic research, and council members include academics who have various kinds of political and social attitudes, of course. And only the free discussion among scholars with various political and social attitudes, stances, that is to say, this is the form of the exercise of academic freedom. Only these free discussions, this kind of free discussions can guarantee the Science Council's contribution to our society. And it must be said that the refusal of the nomination of the 6 candidates directly infringes on this independent role of the Science Council of Japan, and it makes us suspect that the government is compelling the Science Council to become an organization that only supports government policies uncritically. The second context, which closely relates to the first context, is the government's recent tendency to ignore or deny the importance and meaning of humanities and social sciences. The fact that the 6 members whose appointment was rejected all belong to the fields of humanities and social sciences, this fact is not coincidental, in my view. You may know that in 2015, the then Minister of Education, Mr. Shimomura, issued a memorandum to national and public universities, which implicitly asked them to scale back in humanities and social sciences. We should remember that the mission of many fields in humanities and social sciences is to discover political and social problems and proposes ways to solve them. And at times, scholars tend to be critical of government policies. And at the same time, the government seems to regard many fields of humanities and social sciences as socially irrelevant, not relevant. And here, socially relevant means the relevance for short-term economic growth and innovation that leads to such an economic growth. The government stance, which can be detected in these 2 contexts, is something that threatens the foundations of a democratic society. Unlike the academies of many other countries, Science Council of Japan is an organization of the Cabinet Office, an official organization, but it is not an organization which only follows the government's line. It is an organization in which significant matters are discussed independently, as is laid out in the Science Council Act. The government has a duty to protect these independent academic activities. But the present administration has acted in ways that are against this fundamental requirement, and it is attempting to subordinate the Science Council of Japan to the government. We are also worried that if this sort of situation continues, researchers, especially young scholars, young academics, will increasingly come to consider criticism of government policies as something that may put their future or research funding in danger. And as a result of it, they may refrain from the free pursuit of their academic activities. This is a very great problem for a democratic society that should respect a diversity of opinions. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. We will now listen to Professor Sato, who will speak in Japanese and will be translated by our fantastic translator, Meryl Joyce.
佐藤です。今回任命拒否の問題が起こりまして、私たち300を超える人文社会系の学会が声明に賛同いたしました。でもこの事件に抗議しているのは我々学術研究の団体だけではありません。 文学であるとか映画や演劇など表現者の団体からもたくさんの抗議声明が出ております。例えば作家たちの団体である日本ペンクラブ、現代歌人協会などの短歌の実作者団体であるとか、あとは日本児童文学者協会など、童話の集まりなどです。映画でもどうぞはい、映画の方でも例えばカンヌ映画祭でパルムドールを受賞しました是枝裕和監督はじめとする、映画人たち、などです。
To translate into English, excuse me. So in regards to the refusal of the appointment for the Social Science Council of Japan, more than 300 humanities and social science associations or societies have joined or endorsed the statement which has issued. It must be mentioned that these are not only academic and research organizations that are protesting this incident. Many statements in opposition have also been issued by literary, film, theater, or other creative associations as well. For example, the Japan Pen Club, the Association of Writers, also the Poets Association, such as the Japan Tanka Poets Association, children's authors, such as the Japan Children's Literature Writers Association, and not only authors, but also filmmakers, including Cannes Palme d'Or laureate Koreeda Hirokazu, also theater organizations, such as the Japan Playwrights Association, and many artists, other artists or people working in creative fields of expression have also voiced their strong concern about the rejection of the appointment.
特に映画人たちが1950年代のハリウッドの赤狩りなんかを思い浮かべているのが印象的でした。さてこうした表現者団体の声明というのは一様に今回の科学に対する政治介入を放置してしまったら次には表現の自由が脅かされると、それは時間の問題であろうというふうに言っています。今回
Particularly in regards to the film world, many people in this industry have also been looking at the situation of the Academy in the 1950s in Hollywood in regards to their concerns. The statements of these creative groups uniformly believe that if the political intervention in science in the academic council is left unchecked, then it is only a matter of time before there is also intervention in the freedom of expression beginning.
はい、今回の問題はですから任命拒否された6人だけの問題ではなくて自分たち表現者の問題なんだというふうに考えているわけですね。それで表現者団体の多くが文化の問題が国家の支配を受けて衰退せざるを得なかった戦争の時代のことを振り返っているのが印象的です。
So this shows that this issue is not only a problem for academics or for the 6 people whose appointment was rejected. It's not only a problem of the Science Council of Japan, but rather it is a problem for all those who are involved in artistic or creative fields and indeed Japanese culture as a whole. Particularly in the regards to the creative associations, many of those are also reflecting or looking back to the wartime years when the entire culture was forced into what could be called a decline under the control of the state.
短歌の団体なども、国家に協力的ではないということで非難されて、解散に追い込まれたということがありました。現行の憲法は、第21条で、集会結社言論出版その他、一切の表現の自由を保障している、検閲はやらないということを決めています。これをもし前提にするならば現在では戦前のような制度的な検閲など思想統制があるとは思えないかもしれません。しかし今回のように突然6名の学者が排除されまして、でしかもその理由がわからない、そうするとこのまま進んだらどうなるであろうか、表現に萎縮や自主規制をもたらすのではないかというふうに多くの団体が危惧しています。
So for example, in the field of tanka poetry, that field, the association is reflecting back to the fact that the world of tanka suffered under criticism and state suppression during the wartime when there were poets or members of the association who were not cooperating with the state and therefore it was forced to dissolve. Under the Japanese Constitution, Article 21 guarantees the freedom of assembly and association as well as speech, press, and all other forms of expression. It also states that there shall be no censorship. On this basis, while perhaps systematic censorship, as was occurring during the war prior to the war, may not resume today in the same way, but what is to happen if, as in this case, Sikh scholars are suddenly excluded without the reason made known? The Sikhs have indeed already suffered disadvantages, both tangible and intangible, including attacks on social media, which this situation may and indeed already is in some ways leading to what could be considered a delegitimizing effect or self-regulation of other researchers and creatives.
はい、まあ思想統制を受けたという被害の面だけではなくて、戦争中の表現者たちはさらに一歩踏み込んで、国家の意向に沿った表現活動に、進んだという歴史もあります。戦争協力の歴史があるわけですね。例えば児童文学者の団体は、声明の中で、戦前戦中の時期に、多くの童話作家たちが国家の要請のもとに戦意高揚のような作品を書いてそれを子どもに届けてしまったと、そういう痛恨の過去ですね、振り返っています。
And this is not only a situation of the being victims of oppression, but rather it could go one step further in regards to research or creative activities proceeding in accordance or by the government's wishes. So in fact, during the war, culture was not only suppressed, but indeed also cooperated with the war effort. In the example of a statement issued by the Children's Literature Organization, they look back with bitterness about the past in which many writers of children's literature, children's stories, had to write war-motivated works at the behest of the state, and then these were provided to children during the period leading up to and during the war.
はい、メディアも同様です。新聞やラジオなどのメディアは政府、軍部のプロパガンダのためのメディアになっていってしまいました。ですから国民の大部分は、8月15日の敗戦の発表まで日本はずっと勝ってるものだというふうに、信じていたわけです。表現者の団体の多くがこうした過去の歴史に、立ち返っていますけど、それはやはり無意味なことではないと私は思います。
And the same can also be said for the media. During the war, the entire culture was transformed. Newspapers, radio, and other media became media used by the government and for military propaganda. In fact, the majority of the public in Japan believed that the country was winning the war until the announcement of defeat on August 15. The fact now that many such creative associations are referring back to this past history is not a fact without meaning.
はい、表現者たちは文化が権力の介入を受けてしまった時にどれくらい脆弱であるかということを、歴史の事実として知っているわけです。ですから今回の実験を、自分たちの問題、文化全体の問題というふうに受け取っているわけです。
Such associations and creatives know as a fact of history how vulnerable culture is to the intervention of authority. Therefore, they see this incident as both a problem directly for themselves and for the broader culture as a whole.
はい、今回の事件はですから日本社会が今後どうなっていくかに関わる重大な歴史の岐路ではないかと考えられます。これから自由にものを考えてものを言える社会を維持していけるのか、それともかつての思想統制や言論統制、そして科学者の軍事研究動員一気に転げ落ちていくのかの分水嶺、だと思います。もし、この問題に対して社会が関心を失ってしまってこの問題を忘れてしまったら、でこのまま6人が任命されないままになったなら、権力が学問研究に介入してそれが前例になっていくと思います。もちろんそんなことが、あってはならない。ですから人文社会系の学会も表現者の団体も声を集めて今回の抗議声明を出しました。
So this incident is therefore a major historical turning point that will affect the future of Japanese society. It will be a watershed moment for Japan as to whether it can maintain a society that can speak its mind freely in the future, or whether, as in the past, it will once again quickly descend into control of thought and speech, and further the mobilization of science for military research. This could occur if society loses interest and forgets about this issue and the 6 people remain unappointed. authority intervening in academia and research could then become the president. Of course, this is not a desirable situation, and it is for this reason that the various academic and creative associations have issued their statement in protest.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Kibata, Professor Himiyama, and Professor Sato. We will now ask some questions. Let me ask the first question. So you can answer as you want. Did you ask to meet directly the Prime Minister over this problem to tell him to give you, one, the reason why it refuses to nominate 6 people, and 2, to nominate these 6 people? Did you ask a direct meeting with the Prime Minister?
じゃあ質問を訳させていただきます。質問は今回の件に関しては総理大臣には直接面会のお願いをしているかどうかということですね。面会の中でもその任命されなかった理由、そして任命してもらうためにその要請というのを直接総理大臣に対して行われているかどうかということです。
前回11月6日に、日本人というか記者クラブの、会見を行いました。その後、内閣官房に私たちの要請書を届けております。
So on November the 6th, we held a press conference at the Japanese Press Club, and at that time, or following that, we directly submitted our requests, our demands to the Chief Cabinet.
で直接に、菅総理大臣に会うことを要請してないということですか？
はい、任命拒否を撤回してほしいという今回の声明の趣旨を届けたということです。
That's right. Yes, we delivered our request for the 2 demands. However, we have not requested a meeting.
I ask a second question, and I give the mic to the microphone to the other. Do you think that all the members of the Japan Science Council should step down, should resign to obtain the nomination of the 6 other members?
学術会議の全員のメンバーが、この件を受けてその学術会議を辞める、この6名を任命してもらうためにもう全員が辞めるなどということはすべきというふうにお考えでしょうか？
I think we are not in a position to answer that question. And what is important is that in the past, the government and the Science Council of Japan have been, contacting with a mutual respect, in the past. So that kind of spirit is most important. And actually, as to your question, really, I don't know.
Do you have a question on the floor?
もしフロアからの質問は日本語でも英語でも大丈夫です。
Please give your name, your affiliation before asking your question.
朝日新聞の北野と申します。今回国際的に訴えたいということで英語での声明をこの外国特派員で発表するということですが、すでに先生方国際的に活躍されている中で個人的にとかその学会内同じご専門の中でのその海外の研究者の方々の反応などもし聞いておられたらぜひ紹介していただきたいんですが。
My name is Kitano of the Asahi. I would like to ask, of course, giving the press conference here today in English and releasing your statement in English is also an appeal internationally as well. I would like to ask either on an individual basis or within your various field of expertise associations and so on, if you have had any response from colleagues internationally and if you could elaborate upon them.
Well, in my case, it's personally, I have emails from my colleagues in the IGU, but it's at a personal level. but they say good luck.
Yeah, the same thing. And it's only on the personal level. And at the level of academic societies and so on. So we haven't yet get a sort of concrete response.
But I should add that people are very interested in what is going on here and what will happen from now.
Lots of questions? Yes?
ありがとうございました。アソシエイトの伊沢と申しますが、前回も任命拒否された方による記者会見がここで行われまして、このように表明されることによって政府側の方に反応が変わったとか、そういったことはありましたか。もしくは全体の世論の何か感触が何か変わったとか、そういうことは何かお持ちでいらっしゃいますでしょうか。よろしくお願いいたします。
I am an associate member here at the Press Club. In the past, we also had a press conference by several of the individuals whose appointment was refused. I would like to ask if since then you have observed any change in the response from the government or also any changes or developments in public opinion.
Okay, actually the government stance hasn't changed at all. So that's the reason why we are insisting on this, on our requests. And what is important is for the government to make their position clear in whatever sort of way. They are silent or repeating the same sort of things which is without any content, substantial content at all. So that's really the problem.
佐藤先生、何か。
はい。
大丈夫ですか？日本語で翻訳しなくて。
大丈夫です。質問日本語でしたので。
はい。政府の反応あまりはかばかしくない、そのままかと思います。一方でSNS の攻撃などが6名の方に対して、高まっているっていうのが心配されるところです。それからいわゆるフェイクニュースの問題なども、心配しております。例えばそうですね、年金がもらえるであるとか、あとは学術会議は、諮問をしていないということを、元文部科学大臣をなさった方が、初めに言ったということが、あります。あとは、中国と協力しているというようなことを言った元閣僚もあります。諮問という答申していないので諮問がないのは、これは当然のことで、そういうことを一番よく分かっていらっしゃる立場の元閣僚がそうしたことを言うというのが、私は個人的には政治の動向を見ている一個人としては大変心配なところです。フェイクニュースがことによったら政治手法として使われる時代に入ってしまったのではないかなどということを考えます。今のところあまりはかばかしい進展はないかというふうに考えております。
So there have not been particularly significant or large developments in regards to a change in the government response. It has remained largely as it has been. However, one development which is rather concerning is various criticisms and so on social media of the 6 individuals whose appointment was refused. This is something which is of great concern, as is also the issue of fake news. For example, there has been information spread saying that members of the Science Council of Japan receive a large pension, for example, also that they have not submitted the necessary reporting to the government and so on. This statement was made by former Minister of Education, who is the the first person who should understand that this is not sent unless it is something actually on the request of the government. He is the person in the position to understand how that system works the best. However, he was spreading this false information as well, which is a point of great concern. Another piece of fake news, which has also been shared, is the fact that statements claiming that the Science Council is cooperating with China, for example. And this was a statement which was shared by a former cabinet minister, for example. And so I think that these different issues are showing that, well, personally, I think it's of great concern if this is being developed or this is being shared within the political field as well. These are issues of great concern and show that fake news, in a way, is being used as, or we are now perhaps entering an era where fake news is being used as a political tool.
We have a question coming by email from Science Magazine journalist Denis Normail. The question is in English. Three of you can answer. The speakers focus on the threat to academic freedom from scholars in the humanities and social sciences. Is there also a threat to researchers in engineering and in the sciences? In particular, is the administration using this dispute to raise the issue of research into military use and dual-use technologies at Japan's universities? 日本語で。
木端さんがお答えになるなら英語のままで。
Okay. I really don't know very much about the situation in the natural science field, but as I mentioned in my statement, many academic societies in the natural science fields have already made announcements and statements concerning this problem. And in those statements, they expressed very deeply their concern about the possibility of their own research in scientific field, natural science field, or technology field. Their researches might be endangered and might be compelled to be direct towards a sort of what the government wants them to head for. So I think that's the sort of very widely spread attitude among the people, among scientists in the natural science and technology fields. So not only the fields in the humanities and social sciences, but every field in the academic world as a whole are threatened, and the academics are now feeling that kind of danger.
Yes, I want to add one thing to this, which is that the humanities and social sciences and natural sciences are working together increasingly, and especially when we deal with, say, SDGs or ESD or Future Earth, which I mentioned, the cooperation between those formerly different groups is really increasing, and it's becoming more and more inseparable. That is why ISC, International Science Council, was established 2 years ago. It was established by combining ICSU, International Council for Science, which is mainly for physical scientists, and ISSC, International Social Science Council. They merged and then restarted as ISC. So in ISC, International Science Council, science means both natural, physical, and human social. So that's a current situation. And in Japan also, if you look at the proposals submitted from Science Council, you can see the list of the members of the committees which made the proposals. You can see many such sort of mixture of the specializations.
Do you want to? 佐藤先生、何か追加大丈夫ですか？はい。Is there also yes, please.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Kurt Sieber. I'm an associate member of this club. I'm not a journalist. It appears to me that in one way we are barking up the wrong tree. This Prime Minister Suga is getting the whole burden, but this is really an inheritance which comes from former Prime Minister Abe, who has been quite well known in political circles that people who are not of his opinion are being eliminated. It doesn't go as far as what Mr. Trump is doing in the United States, but Mr. Abe has been learning very quickly. But my comment is really, or my question is, this is based on the Asia Nikkei, where the people were worried that Japanese scientists are being snapped away by China and that Japan is very angry or unhappy about this, the loss of talent, which is very much required in Japan. And one of the, and I just want to read that, one answer to that, which came through Facebook was, as a first step, it would be a good idea for the government not to offend the academic community. Thank you. If you have any comments on that, I'll be most happy to listen to it. Thank you very much.
Well, I think there are informations which are not really true. And I think there are something which is not true, actually. I reported in foreign countries. And what is, I think, important is if we leave the current situation as it is now, I think Japan will lose the power of science and technology. And of course, China is spending a lot of money on human force to the development of science and technology. But in the case of Japan, if we have to continue this sort of argument, we will lose our power of science and technology we have till now.
Any other question from the floor? If not, I will ask one. 日本語で聞きますね。佐藤先生も答えてほしいんですけれども、メリーさん、後でお願いします。今の、学術学会議問題と政治の判断、一般人、日本の社会はちゃんとその深刻さとその危険性を理解したことだと思いますか？それともまだまだやはりもう学術とかと関係ない人たちや大学とかと関係ない人たちはその深刻さは本当に理解したのかということ。
So this question is for all of the speakers. I'd like to ask if you believe this issue of the Science Council of Japan and the political decisions surrounding it is something which the general society and the general public here in Japan fully understand the seriousness and the danger of this issue, or if those people who are perhaps not directly connected to the academy, to universities and so on, perhaps are not understanding the seriousness of this issue.
And as far as the public opinion survey is concerned, I think the people who are supporting our sort of demand and the people who are not supporting are sort of 50-50. So that means many Japanese people don't understand the danger which is involved in the current situation. But I think that may be inevitable in a way. And the meaning of academic freedom is not so easy to understand. And as Professor Sato says, this freedom, the danger of academic freedom may extend to other, the freedom, basic freedom of a civil society, freedom of expression, and so on. And so this wide sort of meaning, wide implication of the current problem is very difficult to understand, and so we have to make our efforts to let people, as many people as possible, to understand the problem.
Yes, I want to add one point. A few days ago, in one of the newspapers in Japan, in Japanese, I mean, there was an interesting graph showing the difference of the opinion by age groups, generations. The younger ones are not interested in this issue, and they are very conservative. And it's quite opposite to senior people. So we have to pay more attention to the generation difference. We have to appeal to younger ones. There may have been a problem in education, I don't know, but anyway, we have to pay attention to that.
難しい問題で、この件についてもやはり日本社会の関心の在り方っていうのは二分されているように私には、見えます。この問題深刻だと思っている人は本当に強く、危機感を、持っていると思います。一方で、日本学術会議について大変誤解が多い、うまくこの問題が伝わってないという印象も受けてます。例えば学術会議は政府の諮問委員会なんだ。だから反対はするなというふうに言う方がいます。学術会議諮問委員会ではありません。政府は諮問することができる、というような組織です。で、非常に基本的なことが誤解されている。その上に、先ほど申しましたようなフェイクニュースが乗っかっている。あるいは、任命拒否の理由が明らかにされないままに、学術会議の組織改編に問題がずらされていってしまっている。その結果、エリートである学者が、税金でいい思いをしているんだといった言説まで、見られるようになりました。伝わり方が非常にうまくいってないなというのが、私は気になるところです。
So I think this is a rather difficult issue, and in some ways the interest or level of awareness on this issue is divided into two within Japanese society. Those who are considering that it is indeed a serious issue have a very strong sense of urgency about the seriousness and the danger of this issue. However, at the same time, within those who perhaps are not so interested, there are many misunderstandings rampant about the Science Council of Japan. I think that some of the very basic information about the nature of the council is not perhaps fully conveyed or fully understood. For example, those people who believe that it is a directly consultative body or committee of the government, therefore it is natural that there should not be people appointed who take a position in opposition, for example. Or these very basic points about the nature of the council itself being misunderstood, which is what leads to examples such as the fake news, which I referred to before. The issue then is that without any clear reason being given for the failure or the decision not to appoint, to refuse to appoint the candidates, the issue is instead being shifted to the very nature of the Science Council itself without having actually addressed the issues which are more of concern, more at hand, which means that members of the public have this misinformed opinion that these academics, these scientists are elites who are being treated very well within society and are in this favored position.
確かに単純に6人の先生の任命の問題だけではなくて、それ以上大きい問題であることと認識すべきということですよね。昨日、日本新聞に、平野啓一郎さんの記事があって、そこはいかにこの問題が深刻であるかをちゃんと説明している記事だと思うんですが、もうぜひみんなも読んで ほしいと思います。特に平野さんは若者に人気のある小説家なので影響力があると思います。最後の質問になると思いますが、do you want to translate?
Yes, briefly translate. I think, as you mentioned, it is important to recognize that this is not only an issue about the refusal of appointment of the 6 individual academics, but rather a larger issue than that is something which would be need to be recognized. An article was, or a piece was written, was published in the Nishi Nihon Shimbun yesterday by Hirano Keiichiro, who is an author, a novelist who is very popular amongst young people in Japan, outlining the seriousness of this issue, a full explanation of that. Because of his role and influence upon young people, I would highly recommend that people read it. And I think we will go on to the final question.
私、外国メディアの記者、ですが、この問題について報道したかったんですけれども、非常に難しかったんです。新聞は断れた。ラジオは1本のレポータージュできたんですけど、日本はできなかった。なぜかというと、大きい動きがない限り関心がないということなので、海外からすると大きい動きというのは、数万人が参加するデモとか、あるいはもう、一気に全員の、その日本、学術会議の、会員は全員辞任することとかっていうことなので、これから何か大きい動きを考えること、考えているのでしょうか。
As a journalist reporting for an overseas audience with the international media, this has been a very difficult issue to report on, even if I personally or reporters would want to publish information about this issue. For example, I had aimed to have an article in a newspaper about this, but that was refused. One reportage on the radio was permitted, however, the second was also not gone through as well. The reason being that from an international perspective, unless there are very large visible movements and so on, it is very difficult to show that there is a high interest on this issue or that it is an issue of significance. Therefore, from an international perspective, without, for example, demonstrations of tens of thousands of people or without an action such as all members of the Science Council stepping down at the same time, it's very difficult to convey the size of the issue as well. Therefore, I would like to ask if any such large actions or movements are being considered.
I'm sorry to say that what we can do is very limited, and we as an academics, can do what academics can do, and so the arguments, logical arguments, and pointing out what is at stake, and to let the society know what is at stake. That's the thing that we can do, and so I think that's what I want to say to your question.
Himiyama 先生、佐藤先生、どうぞ。
I totally agree.
佐藤先生、何か。So I receive one more question, which is in fact almost the same question that the previous one, but the science journalist Denis Normile wants to get a more precise answer on the fact that on the implication for the scientists and engineers, and it point the fact to know if the administration is using this incident to raise again the question of research into military use and dual use technologies at Japan universities.
Well, I'm not in the position to represent the Science Council of Japan, but I know that Science Council of Japan discussed a lot about the dual use of science. I'm a geographer, and nowadays people believe, I think, geography is a peaceful subject, discipline. But in the past, it was used for militarism and colonialism and so on. And at the moment, say, global positioning system, GPS, it was developed by the military purpose, but everybody uses it now peacefully. So it's not easy to distinguish those military and non-military. And it doesn't make actually sense to discuss that. I say, Jerry is also here. Japanese Science Council of Japan issued a report on that already some years ago.
Thanks a lot. It's time to end this session. No more question from the floor? No, is it okay? Okay, so thanks a lot, Professor Sato, Professor Kibata, and Professor Himiyama for your explanation on this issue, and we hope that there will be a happy end for the 6 members, 6 people who should have been named as a member of the Japan Science Council, and we hope this issue will finish in a short time. Thanks a lot for your attention, and thanks a lot also, Meryl Joyce, for your translation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。